Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching on Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to podcasts, we're happy to have you along. And what can I tell you? After our special Pesach program, this show has just been growing to the point where you can see that the words are jumping off the paper. It can't even stay just within one little piece of paper. So we're back to our regular schedule. And it's so nice to have you all on board. You'll be watching this, I assume, Motzi Yontif. And we're getting ready for the next parasha. And we're getting ready for Sefira Omer, which we started already. And I hope that all of you are still in the count. Somebody told me that they went to a second Seder here in Eretz Yisrael, and the whole thing was a big balagan, and they ended up leaving before the end, and they forgot to count Sefira Omer. They missed on the first night. I was in shul once, where someone went over as a joke to somebody on the first night. They said, "So you still in the count?" He says, "What do you think? I'd mess it up on the first night?" And the Rav said to him, "You said first night. Yeah, it's Yom Echad, so you can't count with a bracha tonight." But it's amazing, usually we don't mess up in the first week. It depends. Sometimes Chol Moed, people get famished a little bit. It happens. I saw this thing where they have all these little apps to remind you to count Sefira, and somebody wrote, he goes, "There's this great new program they made to remember Sefira Omer. It's called Myriv with a minion." But last thing we want to do is be cynical, right? But you have to try. When people mess up, it's usually the kind of thing where you're in shul, and they're counting, and they say, "Tonight is 24," and you're like, "No, it's 23." That's when you realize, we dropped the ball. Usually people miss the count because they come into shul and they're counting 24, and you're like, "Isn't it 23 tonight?" I missed and it's like you just at some point miss that count. It gets a little tricky. Before I forget, we have a sponsor this week for this week's podcast, and we don't know. This is the woman who actually does our captioning. I mentioned this all the way at the beginning, that there is a certain percentage of the hearing impaired community who follows this along, and they watch it on YouTube where there's an option for captioning. And even though I enunciate beautifully, nonetheless, iTunes or whatever it is, YouTube is not as smart as I am. And so they put in some crazy translations, and we have someone who volunteers to go through the entire podcast and fix all of the captioning for the hearing impaired community. And she is sponsoring this week's, not enough that she gives to the community, she's also sponsoring this episode in honor of her husband Dan's birthday. So that's terrific. We wish her only good, both of them, good years, good shalom bayis and bracha and hatzlocha and parnosa and zeresh hakayama and yir shemayim, all that good stuff. I want to give a quick little shout out to my daughter-in-law, who also just celebrated her birthday this Shabbos. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say what year it is, but suffice it to say that she's still very young and vibrant, and nonetheless celebrating a birthday going forward. And we wish her many, many more, and another 90 years. Whoops. Anyway, if you can do the math. But anyhow, there's this tremendous phenomena where things started out being sort of like cute, and then they took on this status. It becomes bigger than anything else. Somebody said, I got an email, a friend of mine who's a master mechanech, and he sent it out to a group of friends of his who are mechanechim. And he says that there's a minhag, this girl told her there's this minhag, that from Kriyas Megillah, until Chatzos, you should stay Tehillim. And he sent out this email and he says, I don't know, did anybody ever see such a thing? Ever such a thing done? One of the Purims when I went to Moshe Shapiro, I said, now they have this thing, this yeshiva, Mordechai Yehudi, where they tell everybody to go and learn Torah with their children. I said, I don't remember that being part of Purim. So he says it's not. It's not. That's not the mitzvah hayom. So so minhagim come up. Things come along. So there was this Hasidic minhag that has now become de rigueur, and it's called Shlisel Challah, for the Shabbos after Pesach. Now, those of you in Chutz La'aretz, it's this coming Shabbos. For those of us in Eretz Yisrael, we are behind now. Well, actually, we're ahead. This is always messy. And this happened last year too, whenever it comes out like this year. First day of Yontif comes out on Shabbos, we have this problem, because Shvi Shel Pesach, that's all we have in Eretz Yisrael. Shvi Shel Pesach. The problem is that this year, at least for us, Shmini Shel Pesach is Shabbos. So we have to stay Pesach another day. That's what for Chutz La'aretz is Shmini Shel Pesach, for us is regular Shabbos. And that's a problem, because that means that we're always one parsha ahead. If I go to Chutz La'aretz during these weeks, so they're laning what I already laned the week before. And when I come back to Yitzhak, I miss the parsha. So it's a little difficult to coordinate that. So the first Shabbos after Pesach, Kemuvan, we did not do this. And that is, of course, Shlisel Challah, where you make Challah. There's 3 minhagim. We do all 3 of them. Yeah. Not because it's our minhag. I went to a Litvish yeshiva. It's interesting. I went to a Litvish yeshiva. They didn't do an upshare. My wife comes from a Hasidic stock. She says, of course we can do an upshare. I said, not the minhag in my yeshiva, yeah. So she said to me, says, you know what? You can cut his hair, but nobody will play with him. Religious coercion. So Kodesh Baruch Hu, who has a sense of humor, except for my first son, my other 2 boys, they had like no hair. When we did the upshare, and it was like with tweezers and a nail scissor, there was nothing there. So Kodesh Baruch Hu works all these things out. But so now Shlisel Challah, which is this Chasidic minhag, people take it very seriously. So there's 3 things you can do. You can make your challah and poke it with a key. You can actually wrap a key and put it inside. And this is a skula for parnasa, particularly for dentists, because when you break your teeth on the key, so then you go and get some dental work. And the third one is you make a challah actually in the shape of a key. Yeah, shlos challah. It's after Pesach, it opens up the doors of parnasa, whatever it is. So, but it's cute because people go and they at least gives people an excuse to bake challahs if they don't usually do them. Yeah. Except of course here in Eretz Yisrael, I never saw this in America, but here in Eretz Yisrael, they put stickers on everything. The ne'efer la'acher Pesach. This was baked after Pesach, or ground after Pesach by the flour. And it's a tremendous amount of work putting those stickers on everything that's in the store. Because there's no way that Pesach ends, you walk in the next day, and there are thousands of products that were all ground and baked within those few hours. Call me cynical. But yeah, beautiful. It basically means that we are out of Pesach, and we are now in the Sefira Omer mode. And people have a minute not to listen to music. That's why when you're in my age group, this is one of the happiest times of the year. Yeah, and the only happier time is the 3 weeks. Nobody can listen to any music. And since they stopped making Jewish music, I don't know how many years ago it was. So, the little bit of a break from that stuff is actually, relaxing. They've come out with these cassette tapes that sound exactly like real music. And I wonder if we're doing ourselves a favor with these kind of things. Basically, it's an addiction. It's another addiction. People can't go without their music. You have to have their music blasting. And people can't play music. You have to blast music. And people literally grow addicted to it. They don't know how to go without it. Yeah. And I'm not judging. It's just a mitzias. It just seems to me that the more that we become dependent on things, it's not a good thing. Dependency, I don't think, is such a good thing. There was one summer, and I remember I got up one morning, and somebody started to say something like that. I said, I can't talk to you until I've had a cup of coffee. I have to have a cup of coffee. I didn't like the way that sounded. So I made my Kabbalah, Rosh Chodesh Elul. I'm not drinking coffee until after Yom Kippur. Now, what I didn't take into account is that includes slichas, which people who get up early, who are not used to getting up early, without the benefit of caffeine. I mean, some people just seem carrying around these gigantic cups of coffee just to get through the day. Some people don't even bother. They put a caffeine drip right into their arm. You know what I mean? Take it with them wherever they go. It's a challenge. I'm not going to say no. It's a challenging experience. But I didn't like the fact that I have to have a cup of coffee. People have to listen to music. They get heterim. I'm not saying there aren't heterim. But I can't live without my music. Yeah. It's I mentioned this before. Well, I think maybe even the first podcast. They did a study around the world of 1,000 students. This wasn't a Jewish study, and they took students off of all of their technology, and they suffered the same withdrawal symptoms as people coming off of cocaine and heroin. So that's an addiction. It's an addiction. And you have to wonder how addicted I am to things. And that's part of Sefira Omer. We're going to talk about that in the weeks ahead, but part of it is that I have to prepare myself for Kabbalah Satire. And there's a preparation. Now, some people say, how do you prepare yourself? Learn Torah. So that's a little tricky, because how could learning Torah be the way that I'm makabel Torah? Yeah? So you could argue that they got some mitzvahs at Mora for them to be able to learn, and the learning was part of that, whatever. But there's obviously a special kind of a preparation that goes in during the weeks of Sefira Omer to be able to get it. And there's a process. Now, of course, we observe certain laws of Avelis, and there are different minhagim. Some people keep the first 33 days, some people keep the last 33 days, some people keep the middle 33 days. And those are the hilchas Avelis that are being kept. If the reason for the Avelis is because of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva who died, don't we know whether they died at the beginning of the Yom or the end of the Yom or the middle of the Yom? It's a problem. But probably they're not arguing in Metzias about a historical fact, what happened and what didn't happen. Could be that we're deciding where to put those days together. But there's interesting thing. They died for 32 days, and on the 33rd day, they stopped dying. This, by the way, is podcast number 33. Coincidence? I don't know. But they died for 32 days, and they stopped. 32, B'gematria, is kavod. Lo nogin kavod zelazeh. They didn't show kavod. They didn't show honor to each other. 17 that leave is tov. That's really more for a bigger discussion. But there's a sense now of being able to work on, obviously, our kavod, work on our midas. And we'll talk about some of that like I mentioned, in the weeks ahead as we get ready for Sefira Omer. But as we're coming out of the first week, and we want to open up the gates of Shefa. I don't know how many of you had this chustan over Moshe Shapiro, but he was extremely down to earth. He was very, very accessible. But like all great people, he was not completely here. what they show. It's an amazing thing, in Hollywood and politics and these kind of things. They show you this image, and the person behind it really does not live up to that. There was a famous comic actor. I don't want to mention his name, but when I was living in L.A., I was flying back from New York to L.A., and he was sitting there. He was joking with the other passengers and this and that. He was just very friendly. When he got there, his luggage was gone. They lost his luggage, and he was not a happy camper. He was a completely different person than the person you had seen before. So by Gedolei Torah, it's the exact opposite. They limit what they allow you to see, and underneath there's something very special. The Chavetz Chaim had a Rebbe, Reb Nachemka, and he told once, Reb Nachemka, he wouldn't agree to take any position, only the shamash, taking care of the shul. And after everybody left, he would close all the shutters, and he would stay in the shul. And the Chavetz Chaim, he was a little boy, he was wondering, what is he doing? Because he agreed to teach anybody, even if they didn't have any money. So he took him on as a Talmud. I was wondering, what is he doing? And he hid behind the benches. And after everybody left, they closed everything up, and he took out a Sefer of Kabbalah, and he started learning it. And he was suddenly engulfed in flames. Chavetz Chaim said, I had to hold myself back from screaming. So someone told the story over to Rabbi Orlofsky, and he says, imagine that the Chavetz Chaim at that young age was on the level to be able to see those spiritual flames. The Gemara mentions it, Ksuvas, other places. But not everybody's right to see it. You have to be on the level to see it. So the boy says to the Baruch Ber, no, I got to tell you the other part of the story. So after the Chavetz Chaim said this, so one of the Talmidim said, Rebbe, I did the same thing. I saw Rebbe walking off into the woods, and I followed him. And I saw Rebbe draw a circle and stand in the circle. And you said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what I'm asking for now is too important, and I'm not leaving until you say yes. And you stood in the circle and you davened, and after a while you left. How did you know your tefillah was answered? And Chavetz Chaim didn't say anything. So there are people who can come across to us as regular people, but there's really more. Anyway, I heard the story. Pesach Siegel told it over at his son's bris. He had one boy, and came to bar mitzvah, and he was very close to Reb Moshe, but Reb Moshe wasn't able to make it. So he says to him, it's all right, I don't have any hakpadas, He says, don't worry, I'll come to the next one. He said, there is no next one. I only had this one boy. He said, yeah, don't be. A year later, his wife has a baby. Goes to Reb Moshe and he says, my wife had a baby. He says, Mazel Tov. He says, but it's a girl. He says, Mazel Tov. He says, but you said you'd come to the next bar mitzvah, and a girl doesn't have a bar mitzvah. He said, yeah. And when the next child was born, who was a boy, so he told the story over at the bris, Reb Moshe was the sandik, and he said, how did you know? He says, when the Shefa opens, it opens big. And he says, and you can tell when the Shefa from Shemayim, when the bounty from heaven, you can tell when that opens? Reb Moshe said, Kinireh. It looks that way. So when you understand that afterwards, whatever's going on here, this is in Chassidish and Kabbalistic thought, but the Shefa opens up after Pesach. The idea is making this is to have the key to open it up, called a schlüssel chala. A key in Yiddish is called a schlüssel. It's interesting. Somebody said to me once, you can tell how you understand things from the culture, from the way they understand things from words. So in Hebrew, we call it a mafteach, a key. It's what opens. Schlüssel means to close. You use it to close. Yeah. So a key is a schlüssel chala that opens it up. It can be used to open up to be able to get the shefa. And we're going through this process now where we're preparing ourselves because interesting that nature always parallels the Torah reality. We've spoken about this, that the physical reality is a manifestation of a spiritual truth. So if there's something true in the Ruchniistic world, you'll see it manifested in the physical world. So the fact that during these days was the time of the harvest, and they wanted to make sure that the harvest came through and that everything was going to be good, it's one of the reasons this was a time when people were davening, people were worried, is it going to come through or not? There was a certain concern during these days. This is a time to be able to open up the Shefa and be able to open up the Bracha. And Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to give us Bracha. Kodesh Baruch Hu, v'hayom shemoa tishmu. If you listen to my laws, then I'll give you all the good things in the world. And if you don't, then nebuch, there won't be so many good things. So that's it. Coming out of Pesach, putting everything back, getting our lives back together. We've gone through a purification process over Pesach, removing the chometz, which represents the ra, represents the Yetzer Hara, taking all of that out, getting ourselves ready now to be able to makabel the bracha, b'shefa, with tremendous bounty from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we start getting ready now for Shavuos, we go through our weeks of Sefira Ha'omer. I wish everybody out there that you have only a year of mazel and bracha and tremendous shefa and blessings from Shemayim. That's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the podcast, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast. If you want to make a comment on this one, it's RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast/33. If you want to find out about events, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/events. If you want to contact me, it's RabbiOrlofsky.com/contact. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast and click on sponsor an episode. I'm Rabbi Orlofsky. This is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.